Hi, everybody. As you join the webinar, just please put where you're from in the chat and let us know if the sound's okay. Oh, John's here. So if you look at your attendees, you can see who's joining in.
Where is that?
Under participants, you click on participants, you'll get a
Got it.
menu. Yep. That's great.
Yeah. Sure.
Yep. All right, we'll give it another 30 seconds or so, and then, you know, it's interesting. I can tell that people are back to more normal lives because the number of participants live has dropped down, but the views later on YouTube, so they're watching them later, but their lives have gotten busier, I think, which is good. I think some places we're starting to return to somewhat. Oh, and Sybil Mole's here. She's from Italy. I don't know if you know Sybil. So, all right, I'll just go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. I've been hosting a series of webinars during the pandemic to not only entertain people, but to educate them about the horse and the horse's foot in particular. It's been a really interesting process of learning, and it's just, the guests have been amazing. And you can find all of the previous webinars on my YouTube channel, surefootequine.com. Today, my guest is Dr. Deb Taylor, and I know of her through Ida Hammer. Ida will be a guest of mine again later on this month. And I'm going to allow Deb to introduce herself. I've been watching her in the background. We did a little test Zoom, and it looks like she's got a lot of show and tell stuff for us today. So I'm really excited about this webinar. And thank you so much, Dr. Taylor, for being my guest on this webinar.
Right. Thanks for inviting me. And I just want to apologize to people. I've not made something. This is supposed to be real formal, as though more or less you were here at our hoof shop and we were talking about your own horse. I don't have like formal presentation put together, so we're going to just use the things we use on a daily basis pretty much and try to get into
great. Can you give us a little bit of your background, like how you wound up becoming an equine podiatrist?
That whole story is really on my Instagram page, Hoof Smart USA. It talks about how I, kind of came down this road. But basically, I grew up with a foundered pony, and I always wanted to be a farrier. But then that just seemed like something that, in the time I came through, there weren't that many women farriers, and so I went to vet school instead. And then in vet school, I always wanted to be. I was interested in the foot, but it was kind of other people were covering that, and as I started my career at Auburn, other people were kind of covering the foot, and I was an ambulatory clinician. And so I kind of just started looking at the fact that sometimes the horse would either get better or not get better, and it was in spite of me, not because of the things I was doing. So the horse, in other words, the horse I spent the most money on with traditional treatments would do the worst, and the horse where no money was spent might recover. So I admitted to myself that I was not making any difference. I was just observing a natural process that these horses were going through. And so then I started looking outside of academia to the private sector to try to learn as much as I could from farriers and other specialists in the private sector. And so in that place, I found that the main thing about any concept is to always learn it from the original person, because when a lot of things get lost in translation, like the whisper secret going around the room, it's completely different when it gets back around. So you can't really make a judgment about an application unless you're sure you learned it from the original, person with the original idea. You're sure you applied it in the same way they applied it, in the same type of situation, and then you can decide if something works. Because it's really interesting to me, that I've come to, that horses perceive things that seem completely different the same way, either in a negative or positive way. So all these applications and stuff that we stick on their feet, two things might look completely different, and the horses will perceive it the same, either good or bad. And so that's really intrigued me, is what is it about some of these things that the horses are seeing the same? And so I think maybe a little bit about what we're going to get into today goes into that, because I think one thing we have failed to recognize is that the foot that we're presented, which is usually pathologic, is essentially just lacks mass. It lacks mass everywhere. It lacks mass at the front. It lacks mass in the internal structures of the digital cushion. And so that lack of mass, that lack of the hoof projecting the earth, the appropriate distance, has then left the horse in this bad biomechanical situation due to the lack of mass. Okay, and so we were going to get into today kind of some cool stuff we found really with your pads. And I don't really understand all the things you do with your pads yet. I haven't had time to really research what you do, but we're using them to try to kind of look at where in space does this horse really want the bony column? Like, what bony column alignment is this horse actually choosing for itself? And I've been intrigued for years about watching horses stand in pea gravel. Pete Ramey taught me about using pea gravel, and as they stand in pea gravel, their hairline angle will change, especially these horses that are negative, or any horse that has a broken back hoof pastern axis. Their hairline angle, the cornea band angle, will drop down when they go into the gravel because they're dropping their toe into the gravel. And so that has been intriguing me for a while. And then having your pad gives me a chance to radiograph that. So today, what we just wanted to do was look at a horse. This is I think it's about a 5-year-old warm blood filly. And she's got massive, big, flat hand feet. I mean, and the images that I have here are actually after, I think, probably 3 hoof care cycles. So I've already built depth in the front of her foot on these images that I'm going to show you. But even though I've already built some depth in the front of her foot, she's still not satisfied with her palmar angle. Okay, and we determined that by looking at the pads. So I guess what we could do, and we'll go ahead into her first images here. We'll turn the computer around. I don't know where to put all these toys.
So Dr. Taylor and I worked out a way that she can turn a computer so we can look at the x-rays, the radiographs, I mean, by just using the camera on her computer.
There we go. Are we there? Can we see it?
And I'm going to spotlight you so that's nice and big for everybody.
Is it really bright white where you can't see bone, or?
We can see bone. If you look at your screen, you'll see what we're seeing.
Okay, I just didn't know whether it was a glare making you not be able to see.
Nope, no glare. It's perfect.
Okay, so this is the mare on April 22nd. Okay, here she is on April 22nd. And we actually have sufficient sole depth at the front of the foot at this point that most horses would be sole depth and concavity, a little bit of concavity. So that when this number is 20 millimeters, this blue line right here, this says it's 20 millimeters. I know y'all can't see that. But in general, most horses are about ready to be barefoot when they have 20 millimeters of depth at the front of the foot. Now, that's not going to all be sole. It'll be partial concavity and partially sole. Now, this sole has actually been built through our last couple of applications that we've done. But the problem is this horse's palmar angle is still 0. Okay, so her bone is parallel to this ground plane represented by this bright line here. All right, and if you watch her stand, she's got a rather vertical fetlock. So she has a broken back hoof pastern axis. And so what we've started looking at is a concept, and actually a fellow named Pete Healy kind of first made me think about this. He's a really fun farrier. He thinks about things in a physical kind of way. But we're looking here at the depth of the COR. This is the center of rotation of the coffin joint. And this x-ray, I apologize, is a little bit twisted. The condyles there of P2 are superimposed, a little bit funny. But in any regard, your center of rotation of your coffin joint is here.
Can you just do that with your pointer just again? Oh, yeah, I see it.
The center of rotation of the coffin joint is here. Yep. Okay, and what we're interested in here is how far is that COR from the ground plane? Okay, so this is the length of this line, all right?
Yep.
And what I'm equating this to is the length of the center spoke of a wheel, okay? Or like a bicycle tire, okay? And so here's your center spoke, all right?
Yep.
Now, what I'm saying, my concept, my theory here is that most of these horses that have a 0 palmar angle and that are just marginally far from the ground at the front, then those horses, this was going to be too short. And so part of the reason this came up to me was a farrier that I work with here, who I really respect. He was worried about an application that I was doing because it was making the toe longer. But the point was, it was also making this line longer. And it was doing it in a proportional manner where we were adding more to the center spoke than we were to the toe length. Okay, and so this is the center spoke, and now let's think about this thing being a wheel. So this line right here is 6.5 millimeters long. So if we draw another one, 6.5 millimeters long, that doesn't even get us to the tip of P3.
Wow.
Okay, now you think about this thing trying to roll downhill, and essentially all of this material out here, give me the block, has turned into this. This is for my trailer here that I'm sitting in. Okay, so now we got this sitting out here. So we've chalked off this horse to prevent him from moving forward.
Right.
Okay, because of his natural structure that's missing. All right, so what does that do to tendons and ligaments in the back half of the foot? And then it also puts more leverage here. I feel like the shorter this is, and I'm not a physicist, but I've got one watching that's going to help me. But the shorter this is, then the more detrimental the toe length is, because it's a ratio of COR depth to the ground to the toe length that's adding more and more torque and leverage to this toe wall. Now, my friend, Dr. Bowker has described ligaments inside the digital cushion, and my friend, Dr. Johanna Reimer, has recently done a great job on AFA's website of describing this internal anatomy within the digital cushion. And what she has described there is that the more leverage you have here, the more you tug on the internal ligaments, and that pulls the heel forward and under. So toe leverage here is not bad only because it puts increased stress and strain on the impar ligament, the deep flexor tendon. It's not only bad because of that, but it's also pulling the heels under. Okay, so as far as trying to get these horses to rehabilitate, what do we need them to do? We need them to project material distally toward the ground to a depth that is appropriate for just the size of their foot, the length, so that this is more like a wheel. Can you see the blue line?
Yep.
Moving. Okay, and so then you come to yourself and you say, oh, maybe that's why people put rocker shoes on horses, because that would elevate them and it would also give them that wheel rolling forward. Okay, and so there's all these different facets of the hoof care community, and some have found that the rocker shoes are actually helpful for what we're talking about here. We're lifting and we're also giving that forward roll. Now, then others would say, well, that's too unstable or whatever. So there's all these arguments, different ways about that. But people wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't helping horses. So you got to always remember that. You got to remember that every hoof care practitioner has got a different set of experiences and a different skill set, and they're all there to try to make the horse better in the best way they know how, and they can only do correctly the things that they have focused on and studied on, and so you can't be trying to get everybody to do the same thing, and that's good, because every horse is not going to respond to the same thing anyway. That's another topic. But so what we did with this horse to see, well, and so what I'm saying is, if I take this horse and turn him barefoot right now, or her, she's going to be what we call a barefoot non-responder, because she has so much leverage out here that she's not going to be able to move correctly enough to allow the foot to stop being pulled forward just on her plain barefoot. So when we look at what does she want, we put her on your pad. Can you see that?
Yep. So this was the physio pad, right? The one that's the orange top and gray bottom.
Yeah. And I've got this done a little bit wrong here. Let me slide this down. Okay. Now, right here, she's on a deformable pad that Wendy gave me. Can y'all see this? Is this a good angle of the computers?
Yep. Oh, that's better.
Okay. So essentially, here's your ground plane on this left image, and here's your ground plane on this image. And so look what she does. She dumps herself 6 degrees down into the pad, which essentially, you know, I'm thinking about this as the ground plane. So in order to get her bony column to the comfortable point, and look at what it does to the back of the navicular bone. Look at the angle of the navicular bone here versus here. So the steeper this angle is, the less tension we're going to have on the deep. Okay, the more we have a elevated palmar angle, the less tension we have on the deep flexor. That's been proven, that it's rubbing and stretching against the back of the navicular bone. So there you go again. So there's all these people in the world that don't want to wedge one. But this horse, I don't know what you want to call this, but she wants to bury her toe through the ground plane. You know, and so in order for her to begin to move comfortably and for her navicular area to heal, her tendons and ligaments to heal, she's not going to heal if we turn her out in flat boots like this. Okay, so we need to figure out some way to stop that toe leverage.
What did that do to the spoke, the center spoke of the wheel?
Okay, that's what I want to show you. Okay, so that's the center spoke. So now we've got to kind of say, she's trying to kind of get her ground plane to be here.
Yep.
Under the toe. So you see what I say? So
yep.
She just moved the ground plane to 8, and this is 6.6. So she just moved her ground plane 14 millimeters away from the COR.
Wow.
So she lengthened her spoke. Okay, so that's 7.8. And so then when that goes forward, that'll come really much closer to the tip of the bone. Okay.
Wow.
So the other point of all this is, from what I have done and from what Johanna has done and what a lot of people in the barefoot industry have done, looking at wild horses and stuff, they've looked at, you know, of course, there's all these trims that are based on the Mustang roll and all that. I firmly believe at this point that the horse needs to be able to wear out the toe of the application. So she needs to be able to wear this toe off. She needs to be at an angle similar to this, is what my hypothesis is, and then set into motion with the ability to keep wearing this away, because this is proportionally too long in relation to her center spoke. So that's the reason that I like, right now, I'm really working with Hoof because horses can wear the front of it out.
Oh, interesting.
See, so she was still sitting in this and trotting around in this, but the whole front's gone. And so that's telling me that I did what my friend Johanna Reimer says, you got to give the deep flexor its toe back. And you can't allow it to keep migrating forward through the shoeing cycle. So I personally think that these horses appreciate barefoot. They appreciate what Dr. Johanna Reimer's doing with nothing at the toe, or being in the hoof is also another option. Now, all of these things will have a trade-off. Anything you do therapeutically is always going to have a trade-off, and so you got to decide at what point and what stage which trade-off is what you want. Here's another one that's worn a toe off. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing. So now if we take this same foot, this is the left. You put the little green thing right here for a second so that they can't see the name of the horse. What did I do with it? Put this right here. Oh, I get the other image up. No, I gotta be able to see. Where do you want it? Stay right there. Okay, hang on.
We have leases that aren't closed yet, and certain owners that haven't signed a paper to release their x-rays yet for public view. So we have to have
the owner has agreed, but I still don't want everybody seeing the horse's name.
Just move your page over a little bit because we can see the corner. There you go.
Perfect. Be able to see too.
That's not the horse's name. The horse's name is hidden. Hang on, I gotta get rid of it, and then I'll be ready. Okay, there we go. So, wait a minute, is this the right date? Yeah. Okay. Hold that right there. All right. So when we put the horse in the formal hoof, in this case, we decided to use formal hoof for this horse to try to get it moving. And what was cool is with the formal hoof on there, we have projected the foot to where the horse wants to be. So here's the top of the pad. Sorry, I'll just hold it right here. Here's the top of the pad. Now the formal hoof does have the horse at 7.5 degrees instead of 6. But remember, he started at 1. So, that's just a percentage off there that, we can rasp the heel of this thing and lower it if we want it to be exact.
So just to be clear, our left-hand picture is now the horse on a flat surface with the formal hoof on, and the right-hand picture is still the picture of what the horse did when he was on the pad on the x-ray.
Correct.
Okay.
And so now if we try to draw, I'm trying to make them about the same size.
Yep.
And then I get the ground plane the same. So here's your ground plane here. Horse rotated through the ground plane. Well, I guess I just got to do the tip at the same place, right? Yep. This is the new ground plane. That's what it is. So here's the real actual ground plane in relation to the barefoot. This is what the horse is trying to project the ground plane to. So here we've filled in this whole area around the foot with formal hoof, and then putting back on a hard surface. Okay. Yep. So now the cool thing is this horse can wear this off. And what's interesting is well, it makes sense to me that you got to think about this horse is shallow in the back half of the foot is what it's telling us in this pad. It's lax mass in the back of the foot. Okay. It has a lot of mass in the front, a lot of length and mass. So what's it going to do when you put it in the airspace of the formal hoof? It's going to sink to the toe area. So it's going to be a very thin application at the front. Okay. It's going to get thicker as you go to the back. Now, you've actually wedged this horse, which is what people have been doing for years to these horses. And often most practitioners note that when you wedge a horse with devices that are glued or nailed to the foot, that'll have a tendency to crush the heels under. And so that's why in the barefoot movement, wedge is more like a 4-letter word than it is a 5-letter word in the barefoot community. No wedging is allowed in the barefoot community hardly. In fact, if they build a pad that looks like a wedge to me, they call it an incline plane. So, because that word is a dirty word. And it's a dirty word because of what it's done to the hoof capsule traditionally. But what we're finding is by using the formal hoof and allowing it to come all the way up around the bulbs, now the bulbs are supported, and the other point is that the toe can wear out. So you got to have both. You got to have some sort of bulb support that lengthens the support structure of the back of the foot, and you've got to also let the toe wear out. So that would be what would be similar between formal hoof and an application called Rost, is that both would support the heel all the way to the heel buttress, and that actually lengthens. Let me show you this. Oops. So a parameter that we didn't look at yet.
Just tilt your screen a little because we're seeing your computer screen at the top of the radiograph. There we go. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we've gone to 8.9 here. She was at 7.8. So we went a little overzealous here on our height.
But you said that can easily be adjusted.
It can be, or you can let the horse wear it off, because that's, you're going to let the horse wear this thing off. So now another big parameter that has always been preached to farriers is the length of the support of the foot in front of the COR right here versus behind the COR. So how much support length you have in front. See, here we have 10 centimeters. Here, it's not going to quite, we got to do it on the flat foot. Let's go back to the flat foot. All right, here, this is the same flat foot on the same day. and it's 9. See, it's right at 10.
And what's the one on the left again?
10.4,
Okay.
10.3. So really no significant difference in the front half. Okay.
Yep.
Now, when we look at the back half, here, this would be your length of support would be about to there, 5.3. And then over here, 6.0. Okay, so you think, well, you haven't improved anything, but wait. You haven't improved anything on the ground surface, but by the way this comes up and just completely supports the heels, I believe that the horse perceives this distance to go all the way to the heel with the former hoof on.
Mm-hmm.
And people will say, well, I can do that with rubber putty and all these impression things. But to me, I'm not seeing that the horse perceives that as natural as it does this one piece thing, the one piece shell around the foot that also supports the heel base. So the other application that I've seen that'll do that is oddly, and that's what I was saying, you know, the raw shoe actually puts glue under the heels right here, which you could never get away with if there was a toe in the shoe. So if you've got a tug of war going on between the heels and the toe because the toe can't wear, then the hoof capsule is always going to lose. But if you can, apparently, what we're learning, you can apparently support the back of the heel bulbs if the horse can wear out the toe. So, and then over time, you want those heel tubules to stand up, not get further crushed under.
Right.
Okay. And so that's kind of the way that thing goes. But
So how did these horse respond once you did the picture on the left?
oh, she's very comfortable in them. She had some injuries that had been diagnosed at the university. I think she'd had an MRI as well. I don't remember the exact injury, but it was in the navicular apparatus. She's just getting sounder and sounder wearing this. Okay, but so the next step is to just see how much natural foot, how much of this depth can this horse grow on her own if we continue, you know, if we continue moving forward, and what applications will we have to do to continue to enhance that. You know, she's got to be able to move comfortably, and without something fixed here that's tugging the toe forward every time she lands is my, you know, key thing that we're trying to do. And the comfortable movement, I feel like, comes from the angle that she created, showing us what she was looking for in the pad here. See, in the pad, she showed us, and it's a lot, you know, it's a 6-degree change. So if you, okay, it's a 6-degree change. So, you know, it's like, wow, that's a lot to do.
So
but
if I could just say, so by using the Surefoot pad, you saw how this horse wanted to have her foot position, and then you use the formal hoof to set her up basically in that position. And the result is that this horse is more comfortable and improving. And
correct
is what the horse does, right? I mean, that's always we can have all the theories in the world.
Right, correct. I just don't know whether I'm going to be able to rehabilitate this weak back half of this foot to the point that she'll ever be able to maintain an angle like she's looking for barefoot. And okay, and Destiny and I got into a talk about that. One reason is, you know, they talk about when you were in farrier school, what did they teach you about dorsal hoof wall height angle? It's supposed to be 50, right around 50, 51, 52.
On the breed, you know, we looked at the pastern angle, but we could always come back to an average of 50 to 55.
Okay, so a 50 to 55 dorsal hoof wall angle that's taught in farrier schools actually does support a straight hoof pastern axis. Okay, and when you start looking at bone angles, my friend Pete Healy brought this to my attention, that some horses, their bone angle is low enough. If we look at this horse's bone angle, oops, sorry, it's making a bunch of different lines because I got all this stuff in the way. Her bone angle is 41 degrees-ish. Okay, so if her bone angle is 41 or 42 degrees, then to get to 55,
no choice but
Yeah.
to put an apparatus
Yeah,
in
but
there.
I mean, so I don't, this horse is at a long sloping pastern, so I don't think she's ever going to want to be 50. But I don't think she wants to run around the rest of, she obviously has been running around with a 42-degree dorsal hoof wall angle and went lame doing that. So we got to come up with some kind of a, so she's at this 42-degree bone angle, then she adds her 6 degrees in this pad, and that should put her 42 plus 6 should put her somewhere around 48. So we'll draw that out. 51, actually, that's a showing her at 51 right there.
Wow. And how many cycles has she been in the forma hoof in the idea?
The picture on the left, I think she was coming out of her second or third set. This last time, she actually finally began to make a little bit of palmar angle change on her own, just slightly.
Yeah.
Okay, we ended up, I think this forma hoof fell off, but prematurely. This one fell off prematurely, and she wore a little bit of that sole callus off right here, so she's a little bit lower here, but she's starting to build a little bit of palmar angle in her natural foot here, just slightly. And so, you know, what to expect when you're expecting a new foot. I said I was going to write that book someday, but it depends on how bad where you started, first of all, and it depends on what application you're using. So this is +1, and she had been, give her some of these lines. She had been slightly negative. See, we had been battling this negative angle. She had been -3-ish, and she's gone to +1. And that was April 22nd to June 2nd. But this was after multiple applications. And so the first thing that I see when a horse does go into forma hoof is the first thing is they fill in this depth of the front half of the foot under P3, under the front half. And then later they begin to build mass in the back. So it's kind of a stepwise fashion. And, you know, I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it, but I've been struggling to find ways to do it. And this is something we're watching and
Well, and you're
do it.
dealing with genetics and conformation and all those things too when you're dealing with a horse like this. And how much, like you say, how much mass can you get her to build up so that she could go barefoot is going to have a lot of factors involved. But the fact that there's that much change in that short of time is promising, isn't it?
It is. It is. And we may end up switching her to another system. I mean, at some point we want to get her barefoot if we can, or she may go rotating in and out of applications in barefoot. But I'm just saying that any application I ever put her in, I'm never going to put something out here on her in the next 3 or 4 years. I wouldn't, if I stay in charge of her, anything out here that she can't wear off at the toe.
Right. So forma hoof, just to be clear, people are wondering about forma hoof, and that's something that has to be applied by someone who's trained in forma hoof, correct?
I think that's the best way to do it. Yep. Because it's got a lot to do with the trim and the placement of the mold. And I don't know whether we can show, do you have an image you can show maybe the mare we did Friday afternoon and how the bulbs, the blue mold we put on? We offer training programs here to train people to do it. And that's what's been working to me the best. We trained a group of trimmers from Illinois and Texas, and they've just gone great guns with it and having good success with it. It's got a learning curve. There's a lot of little idiosyncrasies of putting it on that make it better to go get trained.
Right.
At least do online training.
And as you said, the bottom line is that you have to start with a good trim. So
you've got to start with a good trim, yeah. And for instance, if I take this mare right here and I put the mold too far forward on her, see, that's her heel tubules. If I allow the mold to slide down her foot because I'm afraid of it being too close to the hairline, and y'all see this where my pointer is now? If I were to allow the mold to slip down, because I look, for instance, I look at this horse and I think, oh gosh, I need to build palmar angle. So let me go over here and shove the mold against her toe and pull it down her heel so that I'll build angle. That's what people have a tendency to do, but you shouldn't do that. Because if you just hold the mold at the hairline, you're going to get the palmar angle. That's what we did to get the palmar angle. That this palmar angle change came from just holding the mold at the hairline here. Okay,
Right.
and then because of the anatomy of the foot, because of the way it sinks into your pad, it's going to sink into the airspace of the mold the same. So you're going to build that same angle without even thinking about it. If you hold the mold, the top back edge, this back edge of the mold has got to be held at the hairline. And then your foot is sinking into this airspace, like the pad is the airspace. Oh, spill my coffee.
Uh-oh. Hopefully not on anything important.
No, I didn't spill it. I said I almost spilled it. Let me use your pad this time. So you think about this mold like being like the airspace. That's kind of a cool way to look at it.
Yeah.
You know, your pad and this mold, this is like the horse taking your pad with him.
Right.
Angle wise. Of course not as soft, but
Right.
angle wise.
Email this video to Wendy.
Oh yeah, we're gonna email you a video real quick, Wendy. I don't know whether you can put it up or not.
We'll see. We'll give it a shot.
But
So
it's gonna demonstrate which email is best. Is there an iCloud?
Sending it to your all that. Okay.
So essentially, I don't know where we were.
did you happen to put the horse back on the physio pad after you put the Formahoof on the hoof?
No, I should have. But what I wanted to do, and I haven't had time to do it, we could do it here together if you want, is I wanted to try to see between the April application, this one, and the June application, could we appreciate that the mold was doing less and the horse had done more? Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. And I don't know, I haven't figured it out. So both applications, the horse is at 7.2. I gotta make this bigger. Degrees, palmar angle. What I wanted to see was, could I appreciate within the mold that the mold provided less of the support? But I'm not sure I can calculate that here. It's hard to do. Right up in here, this white is copper sulfate in the horse's collateral grooves. This is all copper sulfate and impression material within the collateral grooves. Can you see this?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That impression material, and that'll have copper sulfate on the top of it. So we're not really seeing the airspace of the collateral groove. This is the concavity. I'm tracing it here on this right one. Okay, and then here, I'm tracing it here on this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's a little bit hard to see. I guess I can make some lines here. I hadn't really thought about how to measure this. I'm sure I can figure it out. I should be able to. I mean, it looks like this wedge here is the same or bigger now, but this 7.2, so we know it's got an extra about 3 degrees over here. So, you know, it's got to be that the mold is doing less on this side, because we're back to the same set home palmar angle, 7.2 and 7.5. Mm-hmm. And we know we got more back of the foot this time. I don't know how to measure that. I got to think about that a minute.
It's okay.
Accurately. I'll have to think about that and get back with you on that, because I don't think I know how to do that right this second. Because I got a little bit thicker polymer here to the toe on that one, which would also make sense because the horse is less disproportionately deep now in the front of the foot. See, the more they are the more they lack proportion of depth front to back, the deeper, you know, when they've got this excess depth in the front of the foot compared to the back, then they're going to pour thinner and thinner out here. Right. Because that's what they do. Because this is trying to mimic a hoof capsule.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of.
How many horses have you used the Surefoot pad to see what the horse wants and then adjust where you are going to that, what you saw?
I haven't had a chance to use it on that many, honestly.
Been 3 or 4 of them. We haven't documented all of them, but we
Yeah,
like to just see what the variance is.
right. What I'd like to find is a horse that has been left with a high heel clubby
Mhm.
that doesn't want to be clubby, but people think it does. And I'd like to see that foot sink into that surefoot pad in the heel region. And that would really sell me on this whole concept if I could see a horse sink back the other way. But it would be, I should put them on the pad with this on and see if they'll go parallel, ground parallel.
Right. Right. That's what I was wondering.
I need to do that. You kind of get busy in the day, you know, and you're just trying to get through the cases. Eventually, you get where you can't just keep gee whizzing all day. You have to get through the day.
Yeah, no, I know it's like, it's why I only ever seem to have pictures of when I have horses on multiple pads, because I can finally stand back and take pictures, and unless you have somebody following you around all the time. So,
Right, exactly.
right. So
Well,
I
we
just,
take a lot of videos. We're trying to figure out how to get them all filed and everything. Did you see that video send her that video?
I sent it to her in multiple different avenues, so I'm not sure if
I
she's
got a photograph. Let me see if I got the video. And then you had some other show and tell stuff that you were gonna, that I saw you set up.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to show you over here on the back side this whole concept of the center spoke.
Yeah.
The center spoke of the wheel. So another way to look at it, you know, we had this in the computer screen a minute ago. This is how we keep our trailers from rolling downhill, right?
Right.
Okay, and so we're saying that length of, you know, P3 would be out in here. This has got the wrong angle on. I need to chop this off, then it would be about right. Look, this, and
Yeah, it would.
chop that off. It would be like a dorsal hoof wall.
It would.
We need to get somebody to cut that off for us. But anyway, if you take your wheel, your center spoke here, and so there's going to be a certain distance. This distance has to be proportional to the toe length. And that's why adding toe length with form a hoof is not such a bad thing, because you're also lifting the foot. And if you do get a little extra out there, you're allowing the horse to wear it off. Okay, so this thing, you know, can't roll right now, and then because this is in the way, you know, it's basically being chalked off. And so it's kind of like thinking about a flat tire. Like, here's your flat tire horse, where the center of rotation of the coffin joint has just been dropped too far to the ground.
Right.
So you got to inflate it and then let it roll.
Right. Okay,
So
it looks like I got this video. Let me just see if I can get
the
it.
concept.
Save all. I'll just put it on my desktop. 1, 2, 3, save. All right, I should be able to put up this video. Let me just get it set up here. Yep, okay. So now I'm going to do a screen share. There we go. Are you seeing your foot?
That's pretty cool.
Yep, and I'm going to play this
Cool.
video. I'm going to drop off the sound.
So when people come here and train in the form of hoof, uh-oh, there it goes. We are very, very, I don't know whether I can, you got control. We're very specific to try to get the top of the mold to come all the way to the hairline here at the back. I don't know whether you can see my arrow on the screen.
Yeah, no, but you can tell me where to put my arrow. Right now,
right along the top of the blue, yeah, right there. So we're wanting the top of the mold to come right to the hairline. And so that's one of the things we train people to do. But we do see that some people, it's really hard to make that happen every time. So there's certain ways you have to hold the foot. Sometimes you have to let the horse stand in the mold while you're pouring it. Go back to that side view and freeze it where we're seeing it from the side. Turn. There. Right there. Okay, so if you look at the heel, kind of run your arrow along the back of the heel. I don't know whether I can use my pointer or not.
No, it's on my screen. So just
Yeah,
tell me
right
where to go.
there. So this is where we're talking about that this hair, we should have taken a picture of this. This hairline is on the ground. Before? Oh, we have on the before video. This is a negative plantar angle horse. Back foot. It's actually the sound leg on a horse that has a stifle problem and has become clubby on her left hind, which we could put that one on the Murdoch block. But her left hind is basically like a cane. She can't really use it correctly because she's got such stifle arthritis. And so we're using this to try to balance and protect this palmar angle in this foot and the tendons on this side. Balance in her hips by getting her heel bulbs balanced on each side without destroying this hoof capsule. Because, well, you know, if you try to wedge it with something else, you'd probably destroy that hoof capsule, has been my experience.
Yeah, and then if we let the mold come down underneath the heel bulbs much and underneath that hairline, that's when we're asking the heels to run forward, and that's
Right.
the mold placement. So
If you look at the way this mold is domed right here, it's got this little bulb in it right there. You see that little bulb shape?
Direct my pointer.
How do I do that?
Just tell me where to go.
Hairline, go to the hairline, and then run down the back of the mold. Now go to the back, now run down under, follow the mold down, 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 right there.
Okay.
Right there. So that is a place in the mold that's designed to you know, be under the bulbs. But if you let that pull down toward the ground plane, then it'll pour a big hunk of polymer under the heel bulbs. And if you've left the bulbs trimmed so that the heel tubules are run under and then also misposition the heel of the mold, then you could cause a problem with the heels with this system. But that's, you know, that's poor application. That's not the system.
Right.
And so in my little video on my Hoof Smart USA thing, I go over that about how, like as veterinarians, we're taught to use drugs. We're taught to use certain drugs. And we're also taught that certain drugs have side effects and that they can kill a horse if you give them incorrectly. And so one of my big examples is gentamicin. Gentamicin is one of the most widely used antibiotics in equine medicine. It's a very, very good antibiotic for gram-negative pathogens. But it also can destroy the kidneys. And so back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people did research to try to understand why is that. And originally they thought if you give a big dose, that's what's destroying the kidneys. So we got to give these little bitty doses multiple times a day, and then the kidneys will be fine. But they found out that that wasn't the problem. The problem was that there was a baseline and that you had to go below this minimum. You had to go the trough in the curve is what protected the kidneys. And when you gave these little doses, you were oscillating above the trough, above the baseline, above a certain amount. Yep. And so if you never got below that, then you're just frying the kidneys all day long and never giving them a break. So then they found out that, oh, wait, it's better to give one big dose a day and then let the trough be created at the end of the day. And that's going to save the kidneys. Now we can use that drug without destroying the kidneys. Okay? So back when it was destroying the kidneys, people didn't decide, oh, gentamicin is a terrible drug. They just decided how to use it correctly. You see what I mean? And so that's what happens with so many hoof applications, all of them. Somebody with lack of information, with lack of skill hadn't been trained, with a lack of understanding of the pathology in front of them, will apply somebody's method to some foot somewhere and it'll fail. It'll fail every time if you put it in the wrong situation or don't do it correctly. But they use it in a certain situation and it fails. And then the first thing you want to do is blame the application instead of yourself. But most times it's yourself, or you might be dealing with a horse that can't be helped. You might be able to put him in everybody's application and he's still going to crash and burn, you know? There's so many pathologies out there, and there's so many horses with these weak digital cushions that it's very difficult to just assume that they're all going to respond the same.
And so
there's
really what we'd like to do is not to get to the point where we have to do stuff like this.
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right? So if
Yeah.
what would you recommend to people that are watching in terms of what can they do so that they don't wind up with a horse in this situation where we have to try all these different appliances to try and save them because it's been years of damage, basically?
Well, I mean, I guess the first thing would be to try to establish as a foal a lot of motion, a lot of movement, trying to keep foals trimmed, keep them moving, don't stall them. Stalls are the biggest evil probably to the foot. Stalls and applications that lock the toe in, those are to me the two biggest things that change what a foot is going to do naturally.
So when we prevent that toe from being able to wear on its own over the course of a cycle, we're locking that foot into sliding forward, basically.
Moving forward, yeah. Moving forward and tugging on the ligaments that Bowker and Johanna Raymer have described. It's just tug, 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 tug. And then that's just pulling everything in and under. The heel comes in and under. The heel's going to follow the toe. You're never going to get the heel to lift and open until you stop tugging, tugging, tugging on the toe. Has been my experience.
Right. And so we come back to the idea that a good exercise program and a good trim, given that there's a lot of other factors, nutrition, metabolic problems, et cetera, use, training, but those are kind of the basics that we really need to consider to at least give the foot a fighting chance to support this horse.
Right. You got to let the foot fully develop. Like, I mean, to me, I'm going to raise foals that are turned out, that we're going to trim their toes to keep their toes. If their terrain's not rough enough to wear their little feet, in the symmetry with where the bone would project the foot to, then we're going to trim them and continue to keep their foot trimmed appropriately. And then we're going to minimize their stall confinement as much as possible. And that's going to be good not only for their foot, but it's going to be good for their bone density. Because if they're just standing in a stall, they're going to lose bone density. And then we think we're going to just take them out and make a weekend warrior out of them. And that, that's not the deal. My friend Equine Cronin, I observed how he rehabs the thoroughbred racehorse foot barefoot. And if you ask Declan, well, how many miles a day does a horse need to put in on a barefoot to expect that foot to change and to get healthier? And he'll tell you 6 miles a day is minimum.
Wow.
Okay. And I'll say, well, what if my clients can't do 6 miles? And he'll say, well, they should own a horse, because that's how he's, you shouldn't expect him to be of optimal health unless you can do the things that are going to make him optimal health, in other words. So then you got to work around your management. I think that's what so many owners do. We've focused on, we got to keep these horses in stalls because they're valuable. Because they need a fan, all these things. But all those things, don't make them rugged. People that sit on the couch all the time are not rugged athletes. So we got to remember that. And the more we can find the horse, the less rugged it's going to be.
A pasture where they're actually not going to just stick their head down and eat their fill within a postage stamp.
Right. Yeah. And so there's been a lot of, I guess there's been some research, and there's the pasture paradise, those types of situations. There's a lot of clever ways you can get them to move around. I think these European exercisers are the most amazing thing, if people could afford those, and put gravel in them and let them just do miles and miles a day in those Eurocizers.
Right.
That would be phenomenal. I was at a place the other day and I saw one that was out of use and broke down. I was taking pictures of it thinking, I need this, I want this. But yeah, so and then the problem is just realizing, seeing the pathologies that's coming on, seeing the heels migrating forward, seeing the contraction of the back of the foot of the central sulcus. I guess that's another big thing people can do, is just don't let a horse get central sulcus thrush. If you see a contracted central sulcus, then you need to be putting an antibacterial, antifungal cream or ointment or something in there to kill the bacteria and fungus living in the central sulcus. That's step number 1 to getting a healthy palmar foot, is to open up the central sulcus. And then again, I guess, to me, step number 2 is to deal with this toe length toe length to COR ratio that we've talked about here.
Is there any way to from without an X-ray to measure the COR?
Yeah, I mean, we should be able to do that just by, finding it on, well, actually you can measure where the navicular bone is. There's ways you could measure where the COR would be. I don't know that anybody's ever really talked about that, but yes, that could be done without an X-ray.
I'm just wondering,
just looking at the height of the hairline off the ground.
Right.
Right. Because if we turn this back around, and then taking a hoof gauge and looking at your, so her hairline, is going to be projecting along this around here. Shoot, what am I doing? It's like there. Kind of like that is her hairline.
Right.
So it's right about, if you look at the front to back of the foot halfway, this is how we find the navicular bone when we're trying to do a navicular bursa. We come a centimeter down. So you can kind of, judge it by this shape. I'm sure somebody's got some parameters somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of,
it's like halfway in the middle of the foot, and then looking at the hairline, just below the hairline is generally, there's going to be a little bit of variation in that because horses can sink into their hoof capsule, and so their hairline can be different distances from the COR here.
Right.
But in general, I think in general, the hairline should be right about at the COR.
So I'm just trying to give people like just a rough way to like at least make a basic evaluation. Obviously having an X-ray is really a great thing to do, and having sort of baseline X-rays so that you can track your horse over time. But that seems like a simple thing. They could just kind of look at where the hairline is and just have a rough idea of what that is in relation to the length of the toe. Give them just a basic concept, and then of course the center surface.
Right. And the other thing is the angle of the hairline can tell you about the palmar angle. So the steeper the angle of the hairline, like if the angle of the hairline was projecting up like this, that would mean the back of the bone was lower.
Okay.
So, and we've got like physical exam of the foot documents that we've done that. I got to get the COR put in there though, some sort of a measurement. We should be able to do that. Just to come up with a COR on the live foot that's accurate. Destiny and Paige Poss are looking at some cool measurements down the front of the bone, right down through here, to approximate where the tip is. And so we should be able to use their measurement for approximating the tip from the hairline down, and be able to figure that out, I think, pretty easily.
That'd be great, because we had Paige on as a guest last week, and her stuff is amazing, her imagery.
Paige?
Yeah, Paige Poss.
Paige was there? Yeah, she is amazing. So yeah, that's something that we can work on. That'd be cool to do. But the angle of the hairline is something that's very well established to help you predict the solar margin.
Now that's on the both back and front foot, because I know on the back foot, if you look at that line projecting, like whether it's at the knee, above the knee, or below the knee, front leg. But on the front foot, is there a way to figure out where that line should be going?
Yeah, well, just the angle of it. It should be around 30 degrees probably, not 40 or 45 to the ground plane. So you're going to want it to be under 30.
Okay.
Some people argue that, but once you get up around 40, 45 degrees, then you're going to be looking at this getting lower and lower. Right. So the steeper this hairline, we're just pretending this is the hairline right now, the steeper the hairline angle would be, the lower this would be.
Great.
So this horse's hairline angle was, this horse is so flat that it's just hard to even see where her hairline angle was. So that's her heel hairline to her dorsal wall hairline. It was 28. She's not bad, really. She was deceiving. She'd be a little bit deceiving. That's when she's sitting at +3 though.
Right.
This is June. So she's starting to sit at a positive angle at this point, and it's 28. In April, should have been lower. I don't have that marked correctly. See, if you don't mark with barium, you can't do that. See, there's no barium here. If you don't mark with barium, you don't know where the hairline is.
Got it.
So you can't use the x-ray. See, the only reason I can use this one is because I marked it with barium.
Got it.
Why I didn't get marked with barium, I do not know. This one, oh, this was like a day that we were running out of barium. Looks like we were mixing copper sulfate with something, but we didn't put it at the heel. This was April 22nd. I see that looks steeper. I don't know if it is or not. Let's see. $34. Yeah. So see, that to me when they're over 30, you're looking at a pretty low palmar angle.
Right.
And you can't really have a straight hoof pastern axis till you have a positive palmar angle. I know there was I don't think, and I know there was a time when people were thinking that 0 was okay, but I don't believe that 0 is okay. You're never going to have a straight hoof pastern axis like that.
It's really helpful to be able to look at these radiographs because, you know, it's to get an idea of what you're looking at, what you're measuring, how that's relating to things from the inside. And, you know, and then these ideas of just some simple things we can look at from the outside to have a general idea. Obviously, nothing's as good as having an x-ray with good marks, good markers.
Right. I was going to get another horse up.
Okay.
We were, I think, able to change the heel angle. So, again, my friend, Johanna Reimer, she has looked and she's found some measurements that we can use that she's publishing of how to measure for change, how to monitor the foot for change. That has to do with the internal structure health of the back of the foot, which is a good thing. So this is September.
So we did have one question. I don't know if this is really on topic, but someone has asked, the farrier made a 1-inch V-shaped cut on the front of the toes because it had a crack. The mare is sore. He's coming back out this week and wants to cut it again. What are your thoughts about cutting for grooves for cracks?
Groove above the crack?
Let's see. She did not specify.
I don't do grooves above cracks. I don't think that works very well in my hands, in my experience. What we try to do is leverage reduction. Usually if a piece of hoof is cracked, it's because it's had excessive torque on it. And it's been in strain, excess stress and strain, and so it's failed. So now that piece of foot is failed. And then that's made it predisposed generally to white line and bacteria and fungus getting in the layers of the hoof wall or the white line. So in general, what we try to do first is unload those areas to take ground reaction force away from them to relieve stress and strain on that particular section of the foot. And then if that doesn't, and then we may go in and try to clean up the bacteria and fungus that might be living in the layers of the wall, and then we've got to try to grow it off from top to bottom. And so the efficacy of what we're doing is going to be based on, does this crack keep migrating toward the hairline? Hopefully not. And the worst possible thing we could see is that it migrates into our upper new growth that we've generated since we've been managing the condition. Yeah. The other thing is if you probably need an x-ray on some of those because they may have a lot of bone loss. And so you may be trying to patch a crack of the hoof wall over some abnormal bone, and it may be very difficult to ever do. If there's a crenna there, there's going to be a tendency for a crack to be there. And if there's actual bone loss there, it's going to be hard to fix the crack also.
Yeah, and in Kate Foss's webinar, she showed us pictures of a hoof with a toe crack and then what was going on underneath that hoof wall.
Underneath the crack, yeah, it's crazy how much pathology can be under that crack, right?
Yeah, yes. So that's a great webinar.
I was going to try to show you, you get this little guy. I was just fixing up. So kind of some of the changes that we've seen and that we're looking for, I'm always marking heels to see that, wish I could get that little angle to go to the right direction. It's wanting to go the wrong direction. I'm always marking heels with barium so that I can see a change in them over time. Do you see that the heels angle on this horse here from,
Yeah.
this is September 5th, it's 23, and here it's 35 on November 23rd. So
Wow.
we're going to track that and make sure that those things are improving and not getting worse. And that's happening while we're decreasing this toe length, the relative toe length, and increasing the COR to ground. But the thing that my friend Johanna Reimer is figuring out is there's some measurements that would be this measurement. It would be the height, the palmar soft tissue height. That's 27 millimeters. You can do this on a bare foot, just hairline to ground.
Okay.
And this one here, that number is 18. So the palmar soft tissue height went from 18 to 27.
Wow.
So that's an indication of an improvement. That's just basically your hairline to ground vertical height.
Right.
And you can do that by just putting a ruler behind the horse's foot and measuring that and monitoring that over time. There's so many of these horses that height is, dang, it's like 5 millimeters. The hairline's on the ground. So this is just some of the things that we're, looking for. But just to kind of the gist of this is that toe length should be considered proportional to the length of the center spoke. And
right.
if the horse has, if you have a flat tire, the center spoke, the axle, the center spoke, the COR is the axle, right? The COR is the axle of the wheel rolling forward.
Yep.
So whenever you have a flat tire, the axle gets closer to the ground.
Right.
And then the movement becomes rough. And so I know the horse's foot's not round, but they sure try to take this thing and make it, rounder.
Right.
So they try to create kind of their own Mustang roll or breakover. And then they'll often wear completely through this at the front. And there's another whole concept. So if I put this on a horse and he's got a long toe like the mare I showed you originally, and she wears through the front, then that's her trying to fix her situation, because we've established that she had this chalk block out there anyway, and she had extra material there compared to the back. So she's trying to fix her situation. So as owners, we shouldn't be upset about that. You got to have a whole different concept about your hoof rehab. If you're putting this thing on and she wears through it,
Yeah.
that's not because it wasn't a good value. That's because she was fixing her foot.
Right. And so
what do we want to do? We want to,
we're trying to set them up for success where they can establish that balance, but we can't impede that balance. And especially when we're looking at a shoeing cycle or a trimming cycle, there's got to be a way for the horse to be able to mold his foot the way he's trying to get.
And that requires movement. It requires comfortable movement.
Right.
So you got to get them comfortably moving, and then let them move and let them wear their toe off.
Right. And hopefully have some kind of surface that's going to be abrasive enough that they can do that, because if you're on a soft all the time, they won't be able to.
Right.
So we have one other question. She says, my mare has glue-on shoes, which took almost an hour to remove. She's extremely sore, possibly abscess on medial front. What can be done to help her through this? Obviously, new glue-ons aren't an option.
That horse, if it has an active abscess and it's sore, I would get her in some really nice hoof boots. Soaking with one of the products, either Clean Tracks or White Lightning, and put some and then dry her foot off after I soaked her. Epsom salt's good too. Dry that foot really good, get it really clean. Put an athletic sock, a human athletic sock on her, and put her in a boot, either a soft ride with a wrestling mat pad in it or a cloud. boot, which are, you know, for the most sore-footed horses, protection and softness.
Well, and it seems, you know, like I it's going to date me, but we never had anything like boots or glue-ons or anything when I started out. My farrier used to put borium on my horse's shoes year round because I'd wear them off, literally to
Yeah.
in. And now, you know, I think when we look at the amount of change and the amount of research and the amount of energy going into how we can help a horse have a good foot and all the different concepts, I really think that we're advancing forward. Yes, there are different ideas and different things, but every horse is different. So you have to have a large arsenal of tools to be able to find the one that's going to really work for each individual horse. And that there's no one size fits all in any of this.
No, ma'am, there's not.
Yep.
For sure not.
And so the more we can just learn, self-educate, and then ask questions and have a team. And this is one of the things that keeps coming up is it takes a team to make this work. We need to have, you know, the farrier, the vet, the owner, the body worker, everybody on the same page, the nutritionist, everybody on the same page to optimize this horse's health so he can heal himself. Because ultimately, I think what we're trying to do is set this horse up to heal himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. We're trying to put the whole horse in a healing environment.
Right. And then give it a chance.
Right, right. Let Mother Nature not get in her way. You know, that's what you got to think. Like if we can learn how to help the horse and stay out of Mother Nature's way, that's the thing, you know. And how do we stay out of her way? Probably not with a 12-by-12 stall. That's not natural. You know, I'm sorry, but it's not.
Yeah. And
you know, and
it's always possible for you know, like I go to Europe quite a bit and they don't have the land mass to turn horses out, but almost every stable I've been to has a walker. And so the horses are put on walkers so that they are moving every single day.
Right, right.
So
and I know, I guess Nick Barker over in England, she has an interesting way of doing all of these things. And she just provides the footing. My understanding is of her system is that rather than putting a hoof boot on and changing the hoof boot as the foot heals, she puts the horse on whatever surface he can manipulate currently and gets him moving. And then as he manipulates a more aggressive surface, then his foot is changing because she's created all these different surfaces.
Oh, wow.
Who's and that? That's really cool. Nick Barker, she'd be good. Some Broccoli Farm, she'd be cool for your webinar series.
Yeah.
I might watch that one for sure.
What is it? Rockley?
Rockley
Farm? I'm just writing
Rockley
it.
Farm?
Rockley?
Rockley, I think. She's written a book about it.
Well, and that's the thing is there's a lot of great information, but there aren't a lot of places we can go to kind of find the information all in one place. It's kind of scattered about. And the one thing with the pandemic is that it's driven us more and more into this, you know, internet communication. And so that's one of the things I'm really trying to do to provide with these webinars is, you know, exposing people to these different ideas so that they can find information to help their horses. So I'm going to contact her. She sounds like she'd be a really interesting guest.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. And we've kind of gone over time, which is just fine, but I just really want to thank you so much. I know that your schedule is really, really busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and join me on this webinar. And I love your illustration of the wheel, because I think everybody can relate to having a flat tire on their car and how much effort it takes to get it over the flat spot because it's impacting the roll.
Right.
You know, and that's just really, really helpful. And it's these kinds of things, if we can keep, you know, like there's a lot of great technical information, but ultimately we have to kind of keep it simple and look at our horse and look at his foot and make some general assessments so that we can have the conversation with our healthcare workers and our farriers and our vets.
Right, right.
So I want to thank you so much for joining. It's been really great. Yep. And thank you.
Any other questions? Are we good?
Oh, we can. Thank you everybody for joining us this morning. Just remember that you can find all of the webinars on the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel. And if you're trying to register for another webinar, they're now all on the surefootequine.com website. Just go to the calendar, click on the date. you'll open it into a link and you can join the webinars directly from the calendar contact on my website, surefootequine.com. This week we have some great guests. We have Bob Bowker coming back on Wednesday. We have Dennis Varhan tomorrow, and he's going to help improve your eye. And that's one of the things I think is so important, is that if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. So Dennis is going to help us be able to see things more clearly, which Dr. Taylor here has done a great job with her, drawing her lines on the x-rays and then telling us the angles, because the more you can see, the more you can help. So thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. I really appreciate it. And I just really, this has been fabulous to talk to you and finally meet you, actually.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah. Okay, and so take care and have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.